You're still watching the African news right here on Voice of the People television. We'll go straight to the analysis segment of the news. And joining us now to make sense of these stories and more in the studio with us is Barrister Darlington Agumo. Barrister Darlington is a legal practitioner right here in Nigeria and also a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Barrister, a very good afternoon to you, sir, and welcome to the African news segment.
It's my pleasure, David.
Thank you so very much for being here. Also joining us virtually all the way from Kenya is Mr. Martins Irere Ndwe. Mr. Martins is a financial expert and financial advisor, also a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Mr. Martins, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining the analysis segment of the African news.
A very good afternoon to you, Mr. David, and my friend on the studio.
Thank you so very much for joining us. Well, also joining us virtually all the way from Uganda is Barrister Edward Okparo Omatakinye. Barrister Edward is a human rights activist, a legal practitioner in Uganda, and also a business associate as well. Barrister Edward, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to the analysis segment of the African news.
Very good afternoon to you, David, and the rest of the team. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for joining us. Also joining us is a Zimbabwean who is in Kenya. Okay, I understand he's not joined yet, but we're expecting him. And I'm talking about Dr. Masimba Mavasa. He's a Zimbabwean, also in the UK presently, I must say. But let's start off this conversation from Uganda. And I'm going to start off with you, Barrister Edward. Interestingly, conversation surrounding post-election is what I want to ask you right now. What is the situation, the body language of Ugandans after election, and of course after President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni have been declared unopposed incumbent winner of the last election?
Thank you, David. Sorry, I think we were to discuss this matter yesterday.
Yes.
And I think network was an issue. The mood and actually the situation in hand in Uganda is totally not, it's not a positive because, you know, a country where you get people have waken up to go and exercise their rights. They are waking up to actually elect their leaders. And at the end of the day, you are denied the rights. It means that alone makes you not actually even to be such a person who's willing to be in such an environment. So the environment is totally not all that good. People are in fear with the pronouncements of the CDF, who's now the son of the president, who has promised and threatened. And even as we talk, not even threatening, because there are so many people who have been arrested, so many who are mourning, so many who are lost. And we are yet to understand what the motive of this regime is. And we are also trying to ask ourselves, is the world leaving us as Ugandans alone? Because we have not seen any international community, be it those powers who have actually been too much aggressive in other areas talking about this issue. It is just only the few civil societies who are trying to actually talk about it and try to discourage the torture and, you know, psychological torture in the country, which is brought by the military as we talk.
Now, I'm still going to stay with you, Barrister Edward. Concerns are being raised about the fact that, yes, there's an alleged rumor that the son of President Yoweri Museveni is most likely going to take after him. Is Uganda gradually sliding into a dynasty dictatorship where secession is decided by threats rather than the ballots, like we're supposed to have in a country that says it has democracy?
Not that alleged. This is directly what Mr. Museveni is actually hardly working for. For sure, telling you that in Uganda there is only one tribe called the Bahima, where Museveni is coming from. That is the only tribe which is celebrating, even after the elections. So you see, normally when you have elected a right person, you would get celebrations every corner in the country.
Yeah.
But you can see the mood of people in Uganda. So ideally, the Bahimas have become the dynasts, and now they are the ones who are taking charge, and we are really waiting for that day. Because I remember some 2 years ago when Museveni said, he actually said in one of the functions that he will retire and leave his son, which is going to actually happen. So this is the way to go. So we shall be living in a country of dynasts, a country where no voice, no freedom, a country where you are ruled by military, by a gun. That is what we are right now in Uganda. And we're also praying that one day, one time, probably the Ugandans will get back their rights and move on with their lives.
That the situation does not degenerate to that level. Let me come to the studio before I go to Kenya. Barrister, this is something that is really, really alarming. And like you heard the barrister in Uganda say, the mood in Uganda is clearly dampened by the results, clearly not the will of the people. But I want to come on the part of where the West clearly have been silent on the matter, particularly on the human rights abuses that have been occurring in that particular country. Is this clearly an act of effectively legitimizing Museveni's impunity? Because this is what it's all about. I mean, you would recall that the UN clearly said that the mood before election was a repression mood in Uganda. Is this silence loud enough to the views and the ears and eyes of everybody all across the world?
Nobody is in support of what Yoweri Museveni have done.
So why the silence from the West?
But because of this sovereignty, the so-called sovereign, you know, over there, they respect such things. And so when they are not talking, they are expecting you who is the person bearing the brunt. They are expecting you to react, then they will come in. That is how it is done. They cannot just come into Uganda and then start harassing Yoweri Museveni if the people are in sync with what he has done. So if you don't like it, then there should be protests and lockdowns.
Now, Barrister, another question I want to ask you before we move to Kenya is the fact that the military head, who of course is the son of the president, has branded opposition leaders as terrorists. The question now is this a deliberate move to justify the extrajudicial killings that have been ongoing in the country since before elections and post-election?
Of course. When you want to hang a dog, you give it a bad name. They will call him all sorts of names just because he dared to oppose Yoweri Museveni in an election that's supposed to be free and fair. So such things, you should not be surprised. That's the father. Like father, like son. It is left for the people of Uganda. That's what I'm saying here. It is left for them. Because they say, as you make your bed, so shall you lie on it. If they want what Yoweri have done to continue, all well and good. All well and good.
Oh, well, let me take this conversation to Kenya, where Mr. Martins is joining the conversation. I'm going to come to you on the part of the business angle, because before now, the UN did say that the mood at which Ugandans are before election was a repressional mood that is not good for that election. But political repression, a lot of times, have discouraged foreign direct investment. With these kind of elections, and of course the result being announced and President Museveni winning landslide, is this clearly going to bring some level, from your perspective as a financial advisor, would it bring some level of confidence when it comes to investor confidence, foreign investment confidence in Uganda, from your perspective?
A country or an environment to invest First of all, the fundamental key is the political hygiene in that environment or in that country. And when there is political turmoil in the governance and in that state or in that country, you find investors, the people of goodwill who wanted to grow the economy of such country, they will pull off because now insecurity, political insurgents, or you can name it. This will affect the growth of the country. Secondly, the youth we see in the street, these are jobless young people who want to they are facing issue of hand to mouth. So in such situation, you will find that investors they fear because they will come and begin a corporation or in industry, then the next day within a week it is vandalized or theft. And in these cases, even if the terrorism takes the way because it is politically promoted. So basically, in such a scenario, it is hard to invest in a country where there is no political stability or where security is insatiable. To state that how the Uganda should do, if Bobi Wine cannot do this alone, he needs when they release BCJ from the bar or from the prison, the people of Uganda should seek what we call referendum. They need the changes where a president should go for 1 term or 2 terms, then he leaves the stage. In that way now we're gonna see the engine in democracy. This will attract the investors. What is happening in Uganda is not different in what is happening in Tanzania. Regardless, even if we are right now here in Kenya, we can say we are democratically growing because and the 2 terms are over, he exited the stage. From the people we elect another president who will take over. So you find here in Kenya, regardless of the bureaucracies and such kind of politics which comes and go, here it's a place good for investment. But where there is political insatiable and such kind of scenarios, you find the investors are pulling off.
All right, then. Well, let me go back to Uganda, where Barrister Edward is still with us. Now, a question I want to ask is, right now, Bobi Wine, opposition leader, and of course, the candidate of the last election, opposition candidate of the last election, is in exile. And of course, the military chief is clearly looking out for him and asking him to surrender. How much of a threat is Bobi Wine to the existence of these governments that have been elected again to run for another term in office? Why should the military chief be looking for Bobi Wine, from your perspective?
David, number one, what matters in an election or in a country is democracy.
Right.
Where there is no democracy, we tend never to go to our proper ways of even actually in a rule of law. So Uganda has shown the world that there is no democracy. And the panic of the chief of staff, the biggest man in the country, and to make things worse, is a son to the president. When he issues such threats to the candidate, he does not just reissue, he's acting on behalf of the father, meaning that all the threats are meant to actually harm opposition. So it is one way of actually making opposition never to be there, threaten anyone who wants to stand up in such a democracy to actually step away. So Bobi Wine's threats, even as we talk, actually the family is not in. We are happy he escaped immediately after the elections, just to save his life. But we are still questioning why the military is still guarding, surrounding his family. Because as we talk, just a few minutes ago, the family was actually crying because their because they have lost even the food in the house. There is no food, there is no water, because these are all things which have been denied. This is actually a person we consider as a presidential candidate.
Wow.
So those are things we need to ask ourselves. Does Uganda need, as Africa, does Uganda need a support of all Africans? Does Uganda require at this point to come together as Africans? We see how can sort out these kind of issues, because African Union coming to endorse the candidature of Museveni, the election of Museveni, it shows you that we still are backward even in our own institutions. We do not actually respect what we call democracy. We do not actually respect rule of law. So as we continue, even as Africans, kindly we need to look at ways of coming and handle our own matters in hand before we even seek for any support from international communities, international bodies. We are capable. The fear Museveni is actually giving, not only in Uganda, Museveni is actually giving this fear, and it is spreading. I'm not worried. I'm not actually surprised that this kind of rule of law will come up to Nigeria. It might even be there, because I see Museveni is extending the seed everywhere in Africa, which is actually unfortunate for the leaders who lead us at this moment.
Quite unfortunate, really. Let me come back to the studio here. Barrister, interestingly, Barrister Edward in Uganda did say that Museveni is becoming a virus that might affect every other African state, and that, again, should be a concern for Africans. Let's talk about the fact that the AU, African Union, have endorsed the election of Museveni. First off, there is a concern about the fact that even though
push that evil, it will not go away. That's the truth. The youth of Africa should rise up. Their future is at stake here.
Oh, well, let's take this conversation to Kenya. And of course, before we move to Uganda and wrap up the conversation, Mr. Martins, this conversation about tweaking the constitution again is at the front burner, and it's about happening in Zimbabwe. Well, civil society groups have come to say, look, at every single space that we have, we will kick against this, because efforts to extend Mnangagwa's rule to 2030 will not happen in Zimbabwe. The legislators, like I said earlier, have said, look, this is not going to trample or undermine democracy. It's only going to consolidate on what President Emerson Mnangagwa has been doing so far. What's the position with this kind of conversation of rejigging the constitution to extend the tenure of a president?
Thank you, Mr. Edwins. To focus on democracy, mostly democracy is run by the constitution, and that's why you can see majority of the president or incumbent, they come and start amending the constitution to suit their personal or to pass their personal bills through a constitution. But you find in most cases, this constitution amendment doesn't follow the due process. You find like now referendum is, there is no referendum. You find there is no public participation on that amendment. So when a country want to amend their constitution to meet their democratic values and the principles, they should call a referendum or public participation. Because you find these people or this fella, they come and amend the constitution to suit their personal interest, but not the public interest. I think I've interacted with the various constitutions across East Africa and Africa at large, and the United States, the one that we are dealing in here. You find the first chapter or article of a constitution, it says, the sovereign will rest with the people of the republic. Right. So you find the people are the key. Any constitution which doesn't start with the power of or sovereignty, power of the people, that the constitution should be taken back to the kitchen and bring that which suits our our taste.
All right,
If that constitution doesn't address the issue facing the people, that constitution is not solid, and it is invalid. So the best thing to do with the constitution is to bring the public participation, so that these people are the one that has given them job to run their affairs, to manage their tax. So if the constitution is not self-centric, is not republic-centric, that constitution is invalid.
All right, then let me take this conversation quickly to Uganda, where we'll wrap up this conversation. Barrister Edward, interestingly, the bill in question is already with the legislators, but opposition has said that, look, this same man tried this thing in 2013, and he's trying to try it again in 2026. How much of an impact would these have should it find the light of the day in Zimbabwe? Plus, from your perspective, do you think that the legislators clearly would dance to the tune of the president, or is there a possibility that a protest might stall this bill from being read or being debated in the House?
Yeah, for sure. It's very difficult to defeat the agenda of the president. At the end of the day, I remember even in Kenya, it has gone through trial. There was what we call a finance bill, which I'm happy that the Gen Zs from Kenya stood up, and it was actually removed after the president surrendered on that kind of a legislation.
Yeah.
Also talking of Uganda, the military bill was brought to parliament, where it got its way because all the legislators were on the side of the president. So I'm just seeing the same thing coming up even from that country. You know, what I'm just trying to copy up from one of our elder in the studio, we need to do what we call a revolution as Africa. Africa needs a revolution to rescue their democracy, a revolution to rescue the rule of law. We need a revolution to rescue our human rights from the so-called the highness. We also need a revolution to rescue our accountability in Africa. Africa needs leaders who are accountable, leaders who respect the law, leaders who feel humanity is part of life. We should always respect humanity. But as we look at Africa today, all our leaders are for their own interest. They have no interest in their own people. And no country in Africa, I can say, probably right now, the citizens are really feeling safe in that reason.
But the huge question now would be, is Africans truly ready for that kind of revolution? Because again, when we say revolution, you find some other people have to be weaponized by poverty, not dance to the tune of wanting to have that revolution. But this is really where we have to draw anchor on the analysis segment of the African News. I want to say a big thank you to all of the panelists on the table today. And from the studio here, we had Barrister Darlington Agumo, who joined us. Of course, is a legal practitioner and, of course, a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Barrister, thank you so very much for being here.
My pleasure.
Also, Barrister Edward, thank you so very much for joining the conversation this beautiful afternoon. I want to say a big thank you to you. Barrister Edward is a legal practitioner in Uganda and also a human rights activist as well as a business associate. Thank you so very much, Barrister, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Also, thank you so very much, Mr. Martin Siriri for joining the conversation. Mr. Martin is a financial advisor and a financial expert and also a public and political affairs analyst, the CEO WorldGate Insurance Agency. Thank you so very much for being here, Mr. Martins.
Thank you, sir, and you're welcome.
Thank you so very much. We'll take a very short break right now. When we return, more stories on the African News, fighting in South Sudan after opposition forces push to take back Juba. These and more after the break. Please stay with us.